Hi everyone, good afternoon to each one of you for being here. For the interest of time, let me put the house in order and by agreeing on some discipline issues. Each of the panelists joining here or esteemed panelists joining here will be allocated 4 minutes time for each one of us or you, and then I would like to open the floor for around 5 minutes or so to take one or two questions. And also, after that allocated 5 minutes, we'll come back to the panelist again, and I will try to allocate precisely 1 minute time for each one of us or each one of the distinguished panelists. So, if you have gone through the booklet made available for today, it says all about corruption. While we are talking of the creating synergy at the bottom of the pyramid, or also making the growth work for all of us by making where Professor Mustafizur Rahman has ended, making the growth inclusive, making the growth acceptable and enjoyable by all in the entire value chain. So this is very important. So to me, it is not all about corruption. To me, it is more loudly making growth work for all of us, and also through transparency, accountability, and making an engagement, all-out engagement from all the stakeholders is from the value chain is of paramount importance. So joining me today to discuss about creating a bottom-up demand for good governance is Faris, Hadrovic, Business Development and Government Relations Professional, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Dr. Badiul Majumdar, quite known. So Dr. Badiul Majumdar, I cannot see. Is he changed? He was supposed to be here, isn't he? Usama, Khalilieh, development expert and management consultant from Palestine. Sheela, Tasneem sitting next to me, advisor political governance, democratic governance cluster, UNDP Bangladesh. Dr. Abdullah Mamun, chairman, Department of Japanese Studies, University of Dhaka, and research director, Center for Governance Studies. So I'm very happy with all of you joining us today to talk about this creating a bottom-up demand for good governance. So yes, how do we elaborate good governance? Very simply and very briefly, this is all about transparency and accountability through better engagement throughout the value chain of growth trajectory. So, and how do you handle corruption in a developing economy or a transition democracy that we get to see? And yes, now they are talking of engaging more of technology. They are talking of more creation of more accountability at the bottom of the pyramid, engaging the civil society forum, engaging the NGOs, engaging the polity in the rural places to make growth more accountable, to make growth more transparent. So this is how you fight out corruption with more loud engagement from all stakeholders possible in the value chain. Good governance is not confined to one type, and the type of governance offered does impact on how the community engages with it. Global support measures become more effective if decision making and implementation are locally embedded. They can be helpful in identifying people's interest, mobilizing public opinion in support of this interest, and organizing action accordingly. Therefore, when correctly applied, the bottom-up approach can lead to added value because of greater commitment of stakeholders and a greater scope of innovation, which manifests itself in improved social and human capital, which includes features of social organizations such as build-up of local identity, development of new skills and capacities that facilitate coordination and cooperation for mutual benefit and make the community more resilient and adaptive to changes. Improve local and multi-level governance in the implementation of the strategy, which comprises participatory decision making, through which public, economic, and civil society, as I have mentioned at the very outset, stakeholders as well as local people articulate their interests, exercise their legal rights, and mediate their differences in a collaborative manner. Improved participation, which is more adapted to our digital times and more resilient to political instability, thereby making policies more responsive to changes in the way governments, multinational corporations, NGOs, trade unions, foundations, and philanthropic organizations, experts in academia, and think tanks can interact or should interact. So this could be a kind of a just to put up the house in the right direction, I guess, and more to come from my esteemed panelists. And may I please start with Faris Hadrovic to speak his mind for 4 minutes max, and then if time permits, of course, we'll come back to him again after taking 1 or 2 questions from the audience, esteemed audience present here.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. A very relevant topic worldwide, not just for South Asia and Southeast Asia. My experience is from another Southeast region, particularly in that Southeast Europe. I'm based in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a very unique country, very far from here, but a very complex political system that has produced a very complex form of governance as well. Multiple layers, which has, of course, also opened doors for a variety of loopholes and finding ways of doing business different ways. I think that the overarching point is that both the private and also in terms of my background, I've worked with international organizations. I headed a UN agency as well. I've been in the corporate private sector. I've also worked with startups as well. So I have a wide range of experience to attest to some of these issues. The private sector and civil society in general share a common desire to establish a society that's based in fairness and shared codes of conduct. So that in general is the starting point. An important point is the identification and prevention and also prosecution of corruption, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector, which is often a party to corruption. Civil societies also play a very important role. Organizations such as Transparency International are active worldwide. Our international CSOs, in partnership with local CSOs, have pointed out to a number of issues, potential measures that could be taken, and cases of corruption around the world, including in the countries that I've been active in, and I'm sure also in Southeast Asia as well. As an example, Transparency International has also worked with civil society, but also business organizations, so that in Slovenia, where I also spent some time working, they worked with the private sector through what was called a Business Integrity Forum, and which brings together different companies and stakeholders that are interested in cooperating and exchanging of good practices with the aim of achieving prevention of illegal and unethical practices in the business environment. You also have the United Nations Global Compact, which is a worldwide initiative, a document that was launched as part of an effort to integrate business efforts in the fight against corruption. It's the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, and it calls on companies to align their strategies and operations with universal principles of human rights, labor, environment, anti-corruption, and also to take action to advance societal goals. You also have initiatives such as the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, which is the most global of all initiatives or treaties. And it contains both preventative but also punitive measures. When we talk about corruption, we generally think about corruption in the private sector, but corruption is endemic in both the private and public sectors. And often they work hand in hand and they harm each other equally. Private sector accounts approximately 60% of global GDP. And some of the measures that have been suggested, measures in terms of promoting cooperation between law enforcement, developing standards, promoting transparency, preventing the misuse of proceeds and procedures, preventing conflicts of interest, and ensuring auditing controls. As time has elapsed, I mean, there's a few other points, but I'll let the other speakers as well.
Thank you so much. I would again request all the distinguished panelists to contain within 4 minutes time to create opportunity space for others. Thank you. So may I now go to very esteemed, distinguished Secretary General of SHUJAN, Bangladesh, Dr. Badiul Alam Majumdar, to speak his hearts.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I wasn't here when my name was called. Well, as I was reading the description of this session, how can the civil society of South Asian nations develop call for action plan for engaging private sector in an inclusive, accountable, and corruption-free system of governance? And there are several very heroic assumptions behind this session. One is there is civil society in a country like Bangladesh. And there are some voices, but are there really civil society in Bangladesh? That's a serious question. The second question, something can be done to involve the private sectors. That is also a big heroic assumption. And the third assumption is it would really matter. Whether or not we raise the issue or call for action, it would really make a difference. And so these are some of the questions that arose in my mind. Anyway, so if we have to address the question, we'll have to first understand and realize what are the mechanics of corruption, especially big corruption. Basically, big corruptions happen as a result of the nexus between a section of businessmen or women for that matter, and a section of politicians and a section of bureaucrats. And also, that's because of lack of accountability. The other thing is cronyism, the policy of cronyism that we have been pursuing. So those are the sources of corruption. And in Bangladesh, there has been the politicization of business and vice versa. Rajnitir ব্যবসায়ীকরণ, ব্যবসায়ীর রাজনীতিকরণ. As a result, none of these are going as well as they should be. And the business is not really governed by rules of the game. And they are governed by the other factors, the power factors, and the patronization they receive. So really, in fact, we know that in many countries, after period of primitive accumulation, there has been demand for rule of law, and there has been demand for governance system, transparency and accountability, and enforcement of contract. And none of those are necessary here because there is the rule here. And everything is, all the business is governed by connections and the power they enjoy and all the other considerations they have to pay or receive in return. So then what do we do about it? What can we do about it? Again, we'll have to, in fact, this state of affairs basically linked to the governance system as well as political system. They are linked to the democratic deficits. There's no accountability. Democratic deficit arises in two ways. One is downward accountability to the voters after every 5 years, and parallel accountability through the institutions, the checks and balance system, and they don't work. And as a result, and the other is obviously transparency and accountability. They don't function, and we do not need those things. They are broken down. So if we have to really do something about it, then we'll have to really make sure that there is a rule-based system, and we have some basic elements of transparency and accountability in place. The rule of law, the human rights, transparency, accountability, and the participation and all those things. If we do not do that, and most importantly, I'll finish with this sentence. Most importantly, if we do not have a downward accountability system, and in other words, every 5 years, our elected leaders who patronize these so-called business houses, and if they don't have to come to us every 5 years and beg for our votes, the system will continue. So, and also, if there is no really civil society, and there has been a systematic way to make the civil society irrelevant and disappear, basically. We are a disappearing
Thank you so
breed.
much, Dr. Majumdar. In every possibility, we'll come back to you to also deliberate your rest of the thought process, of course. So now may I please go to Mr. Usama Khalilieh, development expert and management consultant from Palestine. So Mr. Khalilieh, please, and if you could kindly contain within 4 minutes precisely.
I'll definitely try to do my best, yeah. Well, hello everyone. I'm very happy to be here with you. My name is Usama Khalilieh. I'm from Palestine. I also come from a faraway country like Faris, but not as far because we're still in Asia. I come from the Middle East. And when I was invited to talk about corruption, I was very happy, but I was saying to myself, like, oh my God, every time I do that, I get into trouble. So let's try another time. Well, I mean, when you want to talk about corruption, basically what the narrative says is that we need laws, we need policies, we need enforcement, we need accountability and control systems, which is actually true. But if all of this does not have the support of leadership and leadership willingness to actually support all of these, then this is actually worthless. When it comes to Palestine and the issue of politics, corruption takes a different path. Corruption in Palestine is, I mean, of course we have administrative, we have financial corruption and everything, but the worst part is having the political corruption, which is what's doing all the damage in Palestine. Now, the way this corruption started is because how our leadership came to Palestine, it was based on grounds that were so susceptible and so supportive of corruption. And unfortunately, this has impacted our daily lives on every level. So, not just in Palestine, I mean, this happens all over the world, but when you talk about corruption ruins everything, ruins all the services in terms of health, education, infrastructure. We've been talking about democracy a lot this morning and yesterday, and we can't really dismiss that. The thing about corruption is that it also forces all the qualified people in a country to just flee and go seek a better quality of life somewhere else. Now, this is also a problem. One of the things that I came across while doing my master's dissertation about corruption is that how former Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, said that if you want to get rid of corruption, you have to do it just like you're cleaning the staircase. You know, so you have to start from the top. And this is basically a great way of doing or trying to clean corruption. I mean, this is really the best way to go about it. Now, the way they've done it has done great things, and other leaderships following Lee Kuan Yew followed the same path, and this has impacted their lives on multiple levels, which was great. And actually what they have done is prove what Confucius said 2,500 years ago, is that, you know, if the leadership is not corrupt, then who dares to be corrupt, which is really great as well. Now, in Palestine, it's very difficult for us to work throughout this political corruption era that we're going through. But the worst part about it is that this corruption is not giving a breathing space for people, and we need to work together to make a difference on the ground. Thank you very much, and I hope we get a chance to speak later.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khalilieh, and thank you once again for remaining within the 4 minutes stipulated time. So now may we please come to Ms. Sheela Tasneem Haq, Advisor, Political Governance and Democratic Governance Cluster, UNDP Bangladesh. Again, I'm sure you don't need to be requested further.
Thank you so much. I wish addressing in 4 minutes, of course, is a challenge, but addressing the corruption and accountability in 4 minutes would be a further challenge. So let me sort of now sort of concentrate on how UNDP here and globally addressing those issues. We believe that this engaging state, civil society, and the private sector in the national, regional, and the global level, from the 2030 agenda, and also particularly looking into the whole status of LDC graduation, especially for this region, along with Bangladesh, Nepal is also graduating. So it's very important to take it into account, this whole issue of inclusivity. And also, we have seen the challenges with the COVID and ongoing crisis in Europe, the whole development challenges, where also we need to think about looking into the industry, commerce, health, education, climate. This is all emerging issues, not in this region, but beyond the region as well, the whole Asia-Pacific region and beyond. Also, I think the transparency and accountability is one of the corruption, a key to achieve of the SDG goals, especially SDG 16. We also believe that poor governance, corruption are a major bottleneck for going with the development in the Asia-Pacific. It creates a drive more issue of not exclusion, poverty, and also the growing inequality that we see across the globe, especially in the region as well. So coming back to corruption and the measures and the issues that we are focusing from UNDP, let me also bit of a shed, I'm looking at the time as well, on the economic diversity, the issue that is also being discussed among the different panelists. Because when we talk about the private sector, when we talk about the different marginalized group, if we look into the very localized SMEs and small medium enterprises, bring them into this whole discussion is also very important. With us is for UNDP, technology innovation is another front line for us to look into the whole corruption and other accountability issues as well. Because technology gives also, with the 2030 agenda, it gives a chance to look into and bring technology into that dimension, but also create a scope to think about how technology can also sort of impact going forward. So we also believe that 2030 agenda that talks about leaving no one behind. We also talk about marginalized population and others. We also believe in engaging youth in the different anti-corruption discussion and also the governance in general. On the anti-corruption issue, UNDP with the Anti-Corruption for Peaceful and Inclusive Society Global Program is also harnessing the benefits of digitalization and innovation in anti-corruption efforts to maximize the impact of development financing, which is very important. For us, on the UNDP Anti-Corruption Initiative, we are taking in the African region on all the Asia-Pacific, especially Bangladesh and Nepal. We are sort of working with the government, the state, bring the civil society in looking into the grievance redressal mechanism, because we believe that the state and the citizen, the demand and the supply side needs to go hand in hand. So grievance redressal mechanism that we have been working and piloting in Bangladesh in different parts, and also trying to sort of engage our different offices in Nepal and other South India countries, and also the Asia-Pacific regions. It's important to see how the grievance redressal mechanism could bring in different issues, the complaints, the grievances from the lens of the corruption, and also going on the different other development agendas as well, which is very important on the inclusivity, accountability, and transparency. If you look into the SDG 16, we talk about peaceful and just society. So I'm looking into the timing as well, but I'll end with that. I think that our work regionally, globally, at the Asia-Pacific regions talk about more often making a more effective, responsive institution that addresses the needs and desires and aspiration of the citizens. I'll stop here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tasneem Haq. So now may we go to Dr. Abdullah Mamun, one of the distinguished panelists here. Dr. Mamun, please.
Thank you. I make sure as a host and as a good football player, I don't have the red card from my moderator. World Cup is going. Let me try and try to be very brief. First of all, this panel, in fact, and the perception admits that corruption in South Asia exists. Maybe level of corruption varies, but it exists in South Asia. I was going through the literature and the available data in doing my web surfing, and I tried to outline the commonalities between South Asian countries in terms of corruption, and that ultimately create injury to governance. 5 points I'll highlight. One is the lack of access to information on how the government are performing overall and implementing development project in order to hold government accountable. My second finding is lack of whistleblowers and a meaningful protection for the existing whistleblowers like Dr. Majumdar. And my third point is the indemnity and protection to government officials and politicians is commonly a problem in South Asia. And the fourth one is a widespread political interference in the work of anti-corruption agencies and judiciaries that make them very much ineffective. And the final point is allegation of corruption also exists against the anti-corruption agencies and unfortunately to judiciary. So these are the 5 points I tried to highlight from the existing literature. Unfortunately, one of the major areas when we discuss about the South Asia, its nature of corruption, as well as the existing practice, we, in the public forum, particularly omit the issue of the corruption in development project, and particularly the role of the development partners, which has been agreed in many international forums, particularly in Paris agenda, or in Accra, or in Busan. And the 4 principles are now driven by the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, which includes that the principle of ownership, alignment, harmonization, managing for result, and most importantly, the mutual accountability. Unfortunately, the money is coming from the donors, but historically they blame the inability of the recipients. But at the same time, huge amount of money has been invested as a component to development project as well as to technical project, but the outcome remains very trivial. This is one of the common scenario, regardless of India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, except Bhutan perhaps, that the development finance are coming. The lack of accountability is highly whistled by the development partners, but we didn't really pose a question to their integrity, whether the right formula is in place to check the accountability measures, whether the right formula in place that makes the government compelled to bound to have proper audit, proper procurement. And unfortunately, due to the political rhetoric of aid, development partners, of course, they like to raise their flag everywhere and try to maneuver the system. Perhaps that is one of the reasons of the existence of corruption in development projects. So with this, let me conclude, because this session likes to move forward with some recommendations for the South Asian countries to work together. My first recommendation would be to enforce the right to information. The second one should be to develop a comprehensive mechanism for the whistleblowers. The third one, the free and fair corruption investigation. And the fourth one would be the appointment of judges and anti-corruption people through an independent body across all South Asian countries. And finally, development partners should take some responsibilities to eliminate corruption. Thank you. I'm on time.
Thank you so much. I must be the odd man out. I'm sorry about it. So at this stage, I would like to open the floor for 5 individuals to raise their opinion, or more importantly, question. And question should be very pinpointed. Who do you ask the question to? You must speak it out. And then whoever is answering the question from my distinguished panelist sister and brothers, they will get 3 minutes time, and other panelists will get again 2 minutes time to speak rest of their hearts. Thank you so much.
The moderator, Mr. Mamun Rashid, is a distinguished younger brother of mine in Fordarat Cadet College, and we know most of you on the panel. Compliments for your excellent deliberations. Now, Mr. Majumdar, Dr. Badiul Majumdar said it's a nexus. Now, who corrupts whom? That's what he exposed. Now, who will uncorrupt or decorrupt whom? You therefore need a membership of honest people, meritorious people, courageous people in the decision-making process, in the decision-making level of the state and the government. How do you bring it about? Because the very process by which people are selected to be leaders is corrupt. So it's like the about 50 years old doctrine of the cycle of poverty, somebody said. Because of low savings, you have low investment, therefore low production, therefore low savings, you have profit. Same. Now here everybody is corrupt. When you face a situation like that, how do you begin? Where do you begin from? That's what I'm just trying to raise a question. It's not a question, it's my feeling. Maybe we all share it. Because none of us are in an environment where you can feel so comfortable. Nobody is the best doctor here. All of us are patients. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, General Ibrahim. The next person, next gentleman sitting behind General Ibrahim. Please, 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much, sir. I am Colonel Ashraf, retired principal of college. My question is from the heading of today's plenary session. Your banner heading was creating a bottom-up demand for good governance. My question is very specific. Creating demand to whom and how? Particularly, I'm not talking about Bangladesh. There are too many countries, corrupt countries, but to whom are you demanding when everybody in the government tells lie day and night? They are maniac. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
My name is Sarwar Hossain. I'm a practicing lawyer in the Supreme Court. In your discussion, nothing mentioned about money laundering. Money laundering is the biggest problem the country is facing now. Why does that money laundering takes place, and what is the actual remedy? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Yes, please. General Amsamin.
Ibrahim, my brother, I am also veteran, a veteran diplomat, and a veteran political worker, politician, whatever you say. I think most of you have done a good job by identifying corruption as the original sin. Is it the original sin? The comment I'll make is like this. My friend from Palestine has rightly said all those things, which I'm just going to highlight. The original sin is not corruption, is not governance, is not human rights. is not poverty. So what is the original sin? Politics. That Mr. Usama had said. I want to repeat that forcibly. In entire South Asian region, and my friend also asked, why to begin? Begin with politics. Unless you have the leadership that others have shown, like in Southeast Asia, like in Singapore, like in South Korea, the quality of leadership, honesty, integrity of leadership. Unless that can be brought about by changing the political culture. What is that culture? Political culture of crime, 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 corruption, 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 and violence. Don't allow you to speak like they don't allow Mr. Usama to speak in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you, General Amsamin. Anyone else? I have got space for another question. 1 minute, please. This lady, please. We must take one lady at least.
Thank you so much for including a female voice at least. But of course, I would like to talk on behalf of the young generation as well. My name is Shahrin, I'm coming from UNDP. Would like to emphasize on enlightening the youth participation in terms of addressing the corruption for the next generation. I have been going through the background notes, of course, all the impressive speeches from the speakers and panelists, but of course, how we would like to go ahead in our next generation in coming days to address and achieve the 2030 agenda, how the South Asian or specifically the country-based young generation can play a crucial role keeping their hands in hand with the government, the civil society, the private sector. This is very enthusiastic group of people, would be very prompt in for the betterment, for the good governance. Thank you so much.
So much to all the, distinguished audience who has posed all this question or observation or comments. So I may conclude from my side that yes, you said it all. Politics, corruption, creating more accountability, creating more transparency at the bottom of the pyramid, getting all the stakeholders engaged in this eradicating or fighting corruption process in our part of the world. And I would also end with our colleague from UNDP, that this esteemed lady, that yes, how do we engage the youth apart from technology that Ms. Tasneem has rightly mentioned, that and we get to see now large corporations trying to fight corruption, internal corruption, and ensuring more better governance. They are often submitting to technology solution building like IoT, like blockchain, like new technology and others. And also, it remains typical to every growth nations, every emerging democracy, every transition democracy that yes, without all out participation, inclusively more from the youth, because they are the voice of the emerging nation. So how do we engage them? And also where my another brother has ended, that yes, politics being creating all the wrongdoings, and how do we fix the politics side of it? And if politics can be fixed, I guess crony capitalism can also be fixed. If crony capitalism can be fixed, I also think that money laundering or pervasive money laundering can also be fixed. Of course, we do have someone like Dr. Badiul Majumdar, who has been always championing the causes of fighting corruption, ensuring better governance, ensuring more accountability, not only at the bottom of the pyramid, also wherever growth should work and wherever growth is being challenged through pervasive corruption. So, Dr. Badiul Majumdar, if you could kindly focus on the question of money laundering, question of bad politics, question of crony capitalism, and of course, end up what you could not finish within that stipulated 4 minutes time. Thank you so much.
If I have to answer all these questions, it will take whole afternoon. there is no quick fix, obviously, and we'll have to have a series of changes. And those series of changes will have to begin with recognition of our sovereignty. All power belongs to us in a sovereign state. And the sovereign people transfer part of their sovereignty to a group of elected officials who are supposed to act in their interest, in the interest of the sovereign people, and in a transparent, obviously, and accountable manner. Now, that the transfer of power will have to be through voting, and voting will have to be free and fair. And then the people who are empowered through voting, and the nature of power is that that power always gets concentrated and misused. So we need institutions. We need constitutional institutions. We need to fix those institutions. We have statutory institutions. And we also need to fix those statutory institutions, appoint right people, and have them do the right things. And then who will ensure the accountability of all these constitutional and statutory institutions? It's the non-state actors. It's the civil society. So we'll have to have a strong civil society. So we need a series of actions, or series of activities, or series of changes, series of initiatives, which will bring an end to it. And it will obviously, we'll have to start with what is called political will. If we want to make a change, then things will change. If we don't want to change, nothing will change. And if nothing changes, if the way it is going in our country, we are talking about Bangladesh, if it continues this way, then it will be probably a collective suicide for all of us, because this will only lead us to a situation which will not serve the interest of anyone, and which will be really bring about changes that will be unwarranted and unexpected, and would be devastating for all of us. And so I think we need to wake up. Basically, we citizens will have to wake up if we want to change. And only if citizens wake up and citizens begin to demand change and act, then only will change. Otherwise, I don't see any hope for change. Thank you. I finished on time.
So much, sir. May I now go to Miss Sheela Tasneem Haq, that many of you, and including the veterans who General Samin and General Ibrahim, and valiant freedom fighter, so they have focused on creating accountability in the growth process, the overall growth process. So any addition from your side, that how do we create further accountability or acceptable accountability in the entire growth process, including what UNDP has been driving all along since its inception?
I think that's a very relevant question. It's very important at this time when we are sort of having certain milestone as a country on the LDC graduation, of course, globally with the 2030 agenda. So I think that when you talk about the inclusion on the economic front and creating transparency and accountability, it's very important, again, to be inclusive. We talk about youth participation, we talk about marginalized groups. Equally, we also need to engage from the private sector, the small, medium enterprises, to be a part of this process as well, which will ensure that the voices has been heard and it is part of the policy reform agendas. Again, like, coming back to what we do from UNDP, we are also supporting on the economic governance and the policy reform program. We have recently established a research and analytic unit, which with the BIDA, which is a Bangladesh Investment Development Authority. It's a small one-stop shop, but also research analytic unit, which help us to understand the whole economic, the climate of environment of the economic development, which is very important. If you look at the regional, the discussion, our previous panel was talking about the BIMSTEC, the regional initiative, SAFTA, which is also questioned, but again, these are the regional framework that we have. So how to utilize the regional framework and looking into the whole issue of the ASEAN countries as well going forward. I think that's also important for Bangladesh to look at the whole accountability mechanism, not only from the regional and the global and the national perspective, but also the global perspective as well. So I think that making it very specific and short, and I think that where we need to sort of really look into on the whole economic transformation journey. Again, I will emphasize the SDG 16 and also SDG 5, SDG 13, which talk about also the climate change as well, SDG 13, which is also very important. If you look in the whole development trajectory, if we do not really address the risk and the fragility, the climate vulnerability is increasing, not only this region or Bangladesh, but globally. It's very important that we talk about the carbon emission, we talk about again on those whole issue of how we bring in the voices of the marginalized, voices of those people who are sort of been deprived or who are being sort of displaced of the climate vulnerability as well, which is very much linked with economic development in the journey for Bangladesh and the region as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tasneem. She has brought in the subject of climate vulnerability, and we have seen the cyclone shelters being made and all the ladies being put up to the first floor without having any toilet facility in that cyclone shelter. So we have also seen how the social safety net programs are not being participated or delineated with the participation from the people at the bottom of the pyramid or the NGOs in action or even the civil society forum or the local polity itself. So now may we go back to Dr. Mamun. I was very impressed. Let me share that he has with his very precise 5 recommendations, which does include that he has say how do we make judiciary accountable, even how do we get more loud participation from our development partners. Where is the money going? What is popularly known as aid effectiveness, or the making the end use of the aid or development support work for all the participants in the broader value chain. Dr. Mamun, if you could comment on this, how do we make growth work, and by making judiciary more accountable, by making polity more accountable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You see, the reason I brought that issue of foreign aid and linked that with today's session is one of the methods of understanding in terms of utilizing aid is that it reduces the pressure from the government to mobilize resources. There is debate, of course, with the utilization. And if we take the perspective of Bangladesh, currently 37% of our development endeavor or development budget is dependent on foreign aid. And if the theory I said a moment ago that aid reduces pressure from the government in terms of revenue mobilization, but it is very much subject to the political will. It is very much subject to the will of the government, whether they have the right bent of mind to utilize the resources properly, of course, with the support of the government. One of the issues, I think, historically we are arguing about the strength of our economic institutions, including planning ministry, including ERD, our IMED particularly. We always pose questions to their ability. But the argument I put forward about the donor support, it should be argued that it is known to the government that how best the aid could be utilized. And I'm very happy to have a colleague from UNDP. I know they are endeavoring for many years to promote aid effectiveness agenda. And you need to assess by the name of Aid and Development Effectiveness Unit in ERD, but I don't know the current fate of this unit. What I know that government officials travel a lot. They attended in many seminars and symposium with the money came from the development partner. Mustafa Service one, who was my respondent in my PhD as well. So I had a detailed chat with him, but this has to be addressed. And second thing, I would like to highlight that what came from the audience about the engagement of the youth. I think I also fall into your platform as a youth that we should not lose our hope. And thereby, I like to bring forward some of my points as food for thought for this panel, as well as for the audience. If I ask that how many of the young talent, particularly my students at Dhaka University, are doing profound research on corruption or transparency, the scope is very limited, and due to the fear factors of the teachers' politics as well as the political umbrella of the university. Second, but thereby it is very important to research, to identify the gaps and advocate the policy from the grassroots level to pressurize the government and understand the frustration of His Excellency about the government initiative. Second point, I don't see the space of ethical education in our education system. Where is it now? Majumdar is sitting here. Sorry to be emotional, I'm taking maybe 30 seconds from you. There's no space of ethical education and religious education in this country. And thirdly, I agree with Majumdar that it has to come from a bottom-up approach, and of course, led by the young and energetic students and the young force of this country. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So may I now go to Mr. Usama Khalilieh. We have heard General Hamza Amin very loudly, politics being put on the dock, as well as corruption, and also crime, and crime. So what is your takeaway, what Mr. General Hamza Amin has mentioned, and also he did try to take the clue from you, what you have spoken before.
Yeah, well, I totally agree, and thank you very much for your note. Let me tell you a fact about Palestine. Now, we have been living under occupation for the past 70 years or so. That's the modern occupation. We've been occupied for more than 400 years, okay? But the thing is that if you ask Palestinians in the street right now, which is worse, is it the occupation or corruption? You would be surprised. People are hurt on a daily basis by corruption. Corruption is killing prospects for healthy living and future of Palestinians, unfortunately. The occupation is the ugliest thing anyone can live through or under. That goes without saying. But politics and political corruption in Palestine had made things even much worse. Now that's the problem. And if I want to go to some of the comments that were raised, I mean, sir, you were talking about who corrupts whom, okay? And I tell you, it's a human nature that we're all weak. Everyone can corrupt anyone, okay? The thing is that it all goes down to the system that we are living within. We're all susceptible, we're all weak, okay? But we need to put a stop to it somehow.
More dangerous pandemic than COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, COVID was just for a period. This has been going on and will keep on going on. Absolutely. I mean, and I don't know who asked about what do we do with it. Well, simple. We have to treat corruption as if we're talking about a person who went into the emergency room who's bleeding, okay? We have to stop the bleeding. That should be our first priority. Then we can look into why and how things happen, and then we can do all the research that we want so that we will not fall into this again, you know? But we have to cut off the bleeding, you know? That's how we start. We can't be soft when it comes to corruption. We have to take extra measures, we have to take tough measures, you know? This is how it worked in Singapore and other places around the world. The law needs to be applied without any reservations or exceptions. That's the thing. That's how we go on, you know? Because, you know, I mean, let me also talk from the bottom-up approach, okay? We're talking about people, random people in the street. I believe in the saying, give people what they want, okay? And people simply want to live better lives, okay? And they cannot do that under the tyranny of occupation. Because occupation is just awful. But when you want to flavor occupation with corruption, oh my God, I mean, I can tell you, I'm living that on a daily basis in Palestine. I can tell you one thing. I mean, it's not going to go away easily, and we need to work together, and we need to start bottom up, because the leadership will not just say, well, I've been wrong, okay, let's try to make things better. So we need to be tough about it. Thank you very much.
So now may I go to Mr. Faris Hadrovic, that yes, you have heard all of us here, basically the esteemed panelists, that yes, poor governance, polity, business nexus in a developing country or an emerging economy. So how do we handle it in the emerging part of the entire world? That yes, how do you handle this emerging corruption, emerging hobnobbing between the political parties, party in power, as well as the corrupt businessmen?
Thank you. That was a fascinating example we just heard from Palestine. I can also draw a parallel in, which is perhaps mind-boggling for somebody from Bangladesh, a country of 170 million people. Bosnia and Herzegovina is about 3.5 million people. On that 3.5 million people, we have 14 governments. So we have 3 parliaments. We have over 150 ministers in different levels. So you can imagine the complexity of I mean, it's a result of a war and being set up in a particular way. But it's also, so it's very conducive to corruption, but it's also another way of preventing political corruption in other levels of government. So there's checks and balances in a way. It's a very complex system. It's a very expensive system. And it's a system that doesn't breed progress. As a result, we have significant immigration, particularly of the youth, into western parts of Europe. And for a country of only 3.5 million people, when you get several 100,000 youth that are leaving, it's a significant blow to a country. And most also cite corruption as one of the primary reasons why they leave, because there's no perspective, there's no future. It's jobs and opportunities are only through connections, and so on and so forth. Now, what can you do? Well, one of the simplest things is to simplify things, to simplify procedures, to simplify governance, to make it more transparent and easy and accessible and acceptable and understandable. That's number one. Number two is to install measures. You have to, criminalize corruption. First of all, you have to define it. What is corruption? What are forms of corruption? Because people don't necessarily always understand what is corruption. You have corruption. We have, for example, corruption in the medical sector as well, where people pay their doctors to get preferential treatment, and they don't. You talk to people, they don't consider that corruption. They think it's just it's a way of me to get a preferential treatment and treat my doctor so I get better service. So that's also very important to define it so that people know what they're doing is actually corruption, that they're supporting it. So it has to be criminalized. The bribery of public officials, of international public officials in international organizations, trading in influence also needs to be criminalized and defined as well. And laundering, somebody mentioned money laundering, so laundering the proceeds of crime also. Those are, I think, the primary 4 things that could be done in terms of promoting transparency and combating corruption.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hadrovic. And here, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end. To lighten the situation a bit, we have talked so much about politics, nexus between bad business and the possibly bad politics, and also the failure of the institutions. Here comes that on a further lighter note, don't take me so seriously, because political science was my subsidiary in my undergrad. But there was a saying that a lot of our professors used to at least teach us that yes, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So if there is no effective parliament, if there is no process of hearing the voices of the marginalized, that Ms. Tasneem also re-emphasized on continuously, and also creating an opportunity domain for all of us to share the growth or success of growth equally, and being participated by all of us in the entire value chain of the growth trajectory, that unless that can be created, we cannot make growth work for all of us. And thereby also corruption will remain to be discussed in the times to come. Thank you so much once again for being with us, and at least for committing each one of you towards getting into a more corruption-free society or economy or economic decision-making process. Thank you so much.